And there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about what the biosphere is, okay? And so I think one of our problems is right there in the title is the word reserve. And of course, reserve, let's box it off and fence it off and whatever. And that's not the case at all. So let's just run through and find out what it's about. So I guess I'm in control here, am I? Everybody's screen changes. Okay, so they're really very beautiful areas. We're very fortunate to live where we do. And they're beautiful areas, and we consider people part of the ecosystem. When we talk ecosystem, everybody thinks about beavers and foxes and fish and everything else. But we're part of an ecosystem as well, okay? And so we're right there. And really what a biosphere is about balance. Balance between the needs of the environment and the needs of the people living in that environment, okay? And that is really key, that whole word about balance. Some basic quick facts. There are 701 biospheres presently worldwide, and that's in 124 countries. There are 18 of them in Canada, and of course our biosphere designation was back in 2011. And the total size is there, as you can see. Very quickly now, that's where the 18 biospheres are located throughout Canada. And our biosphere is designated by or determined, the boundary is determined by the watershed. So you see that in this particular slide. And one of the things we should remember is that our biosphere is located in Mi'kma'ki, which is the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And there are 7 districts in Mi'kma'ki, and Unama'ki, or Cape Breton Island, is one of them. A typical biosphere, no matter where you go in the world, there's 3 parts to it, okay? And they're very simple: a core area, a buffer area, and a transition area. And a core area is basically, we have 3 objectives as a biosphere, or any biosphere around the world. And these three areas kind of look after that. So often you hear about conservation talked about for biospheres. Okay, we're going to protect species and so on. And that happens essentially in the core areas and the buffer areas as well. And the buffer area is not quite as strict. And in the transition areas where you find mostly the people, okay? And I'm probably thinking that most of you have been maybe to Moncton, the city of Moncton, and you've been to maybe Fundy National Park. Now, if you kind of think of the map of New Brunswick and put it Moncton and Fundy National Park and put a big area around it, that's a biosphere as well. So you think, can a city be in a biosphere? Most definitely, and there are many throughout Canada that have cities in them. So we sometimes think it's someplace out in the country. We don't happen to have here in Cape Breton, in our biosphere, a large urban population. But a lot of the biospheres have large urban populations, and they would be in that transition area. So the other thing about a biosphere is that, as beautiful as it is, we don't have any kind of authority, okay? We're not a protected area, we're not a bureaucratic level, we're not a government, we're not national park, okay? We are really a body that helps to facilitate in an area for the 3 objectives, which I'll get to in just a moment, okay? And so they're learning places to learn how to live sustainably with nature so that we don't ruin where we are living, you know? We keep a good, clean house, I guess you say. But not necessarily spotless, but a nice, clean house. Okay, so there's a dear old beaver. Places that, in a biosphere, we promote kind of, as I said earlier, balance, but it's also prevention and it's management of biodiversity as well as included. And the reason I put a beaver in there is because if you've ever had one near your back door, that little stream some spring suddenly turns into a small pond and is on its way to becoming a lake. And so the first thing you want to do with the poor beaver is shoot it. But there's a good way to handle these things, and it's not always to take out the gun and kill the animal. That's what we're about. We're about kind of being sensible and using best practices, okay? And so here are our objectives, and very simply they are conservation of species and resources in our ecosystem. 2, sustainable development using best practices, a sensible, balanced approach. And finally, community capacity building, which is really just talking about the people in the community, the talents they have, and the resources of that community, okay? So in conservation, basically, this happens in the core and buffer areas. So again, you don't think of, I use the city of Moncton, which is in a biosphere. You don't think of Moncton being a conservation area. But yet, when they do their municipal planning or whatever, those things are in the back of their minds. You know, how do we handle this situation or that situation, okay? Now, I'm just going to, this slide, I'm going to quickly flick through these because I want to get to the second objective, and that is sustainability. And so sustainability in a biosphere is basically the ability of the economy to support a defined level of economic production indefinitely. So not just the generation that you're living in, but the generations that will follow. And to do that, you want to make a decision in your sustainable development planning that's your environment is protected or it's healthy, your society in which you live, your community is healthy, the culture of that community is a healthy one, and of course the economics of that community or the economy of that community is a healthy one as all. And this we consider to be the 4 pillars of any biosphere. Now this slide is just throwing in an example of, in sustainable development, trying to find the best practice, the best way of doing things. So this is just a little example of, for example, controlling stormwater runoff by having adequate setbacks, filtering stormwater runoff, and retaining natural vegetation around the periphery of your water sources. And making these sensible kinds of decisions is keeping your water source clean. Whoops, I went backwards, sorry. And the other thing you're doing is you're helping to protect areas that are beyond your urban areas. And in our particular biosphere, these are 4 areas in particular that are protected. Now, protected doesn't mean we build a fence around it. It just means that we look at keeping maybe in heavy industrial development in that area away from it. But it's not, we basically educate and help people to make decisions that are right for the area. We're not going to say you can or can't do this or that or the other thing. I'm talking way too long and I need Gordon to have a little bit of time here. So once again,
when it's time for
oh,
you to
good.
stop.
I hope you do. Okay, so really, just essentially, it's using best practices in your community planning or municipal planning. And finally, our third objective is building community capacity. And as I said earlier, it's taking the people in your community, utilizing their talents, and taking your community resources and really building the strengths that you have in your community. And that's what we like to promote, okay? And we can promote that through research, through education, through monitoring, and we try to facilitate this through community organizations, but kind of joining forces with them and helping to develop communities that have diverse culture and diverse economies. And of course, that all goes to building a better community overall in your families, business, industry, conservation, tourism, that's a big one. That's something the biosphere is really trying to branch out and talk about sustainable development in this area, not anywhere around the biosphere, not just Richmond County, but completely all the way around. And we really want to work on that over the next couple of years and develop sustainable tourism. And the big thing about UNESCO is that it's an internationally recognized organization. And you have experts and you have a network of information, help, whatever, that you can utilize through that organization. So it's not that they are controlling in any way. It's basically you've got a resource that you can go to. Plus, you've got that label that you can utilize, especially if you were developing tourism plans for this area. You're in a UNESCO biosphere, and so that in itself, and of course, Gordon here was very much involved with the road signage, and you've seen that. And so all of that is very beneficial. And basically, I think this just says here that what we are, we're just an organization we're all volunteers. It's a charitable organization. We promote best practices throughout the biosphere as best we can and like to work with other community groups to do that. And we maximize any educational resources we can get our hands on. Leverage national and international networking. So there are other biospheres in the country who have tried different things. They have good ideas that possibly we can utilize, or from other biospheres worldwide. It doesn't matter. There's a network out there that we can use. And we deliver related projects through our members. So we have different committees on our board, and we have a trail committee. We have oh, remind me, I'm starting to lose it, Gordon.
Education committee.
Education committee. The signage committee has done its work. We had a climate change adaptation forum last year. Recertification, because every 10 years, every biosphere has to go through this process where they give you a
That's a good segue to me.
Oh, yeah, it is. They give you a 43-page document, and Gordon's going to take it from here and tell you all about that. Not the document, but
okay. Madam
So,
Warden,
Gordon,
Councillor. Oh,
could I ask you? Yeah, thank
Yes.
you.
there. Madam Warden, councillors, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your time, and I'll be brief. We convinced UNESCO that this area here, the watershed of the Bador Lake, deserves to be a UNESCO biosphere reserve because the people here try to live sustainably with nature. And one of the documents that we included in our initial submission was the Richmond County Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, which is eerily similar to the goals of sustainable development for a biosphere reserve. And all the municipalities, all 4 municipalities have these plans. And you also have the climate change adaptation plans that you're working through, you know, so kudos to Richmond County. So regarding the misconception of biosphere reserves, the Fundy Biosphere Reserve in New Brunswick with Moncton in the center. Moncton is the fastest growing city in New Brunswick. The Manicouagan Biosphere Reserve in Quebec has an alcan smelter right in the middle of it in Baie-Comeau, you know, so don't be afraid about biosphere reserves stifling development. Yeah. UNESCO gave this area the designation of a biosphere reserve because we were able to demonstrate to them that it's a good place. So I'd just like to give you quickly a little bit of background. 10 years ago, while we were doing massive community presentations to convince people that it would not stifle development. The original board was seeking broad community support, and Richmond County Council insisted that they should have a position on our board. So we modified our bylaws to allow that to happen, and we gave positions to all 4 municipal councils on our board. And shortly after that, Richmond County resigned from the board. So every time there's an election, we go back to the municipal counties and offer them the opportunity to be on our board. And I thought this was going to be our official invitation to you, but on the drive over here, Eileen tells me that you may have received a letter. Madam. However, be that as it may, this could be the official. You may already have been requested.
If I don't find that, I will reach out to you. How's that? I haven't seen it come in.
So the position could be staffed by a counselor or or a, staff member.
Gordon, would a member at large from the public, as a representative of ours, a designate essentially, be also acceptable? Someone who could report back, type of thing, just that liaison?
Sure, it doesn't
Certainly
have,
could be, yes.
yes, it wouldn't have to be, I mean, I'm assuming everybody here has a day job and that they're doing this as community service, right? For the most part, I mean, that's usually how it works. And
Yes, it could be.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so definitely.
So that concludes my
You're busy
presentation.
people.
Any questions?
Any questions, councillors? Yes, we have Deputy Warden.
Yeah, I only have one, and that was the picture of the little beaver. God love him.
Oh, you've had one
I
in
just
your
would
back
like, I would
door.
just like to know what your solution to removing, because obviously you said it's not
You
shooting
mean
them
calling
was,
DNR? Have a heart cage? And
that was it. It was a great presentation. Thank you very much.
yeah, no, everybody has their beaver problems every now and then.
Councillor
just wanted
Sampson.
to-
If you live in the
I
country.
guess we didn't actually say we were requesting a letter of support. You do have the letter, but that's
Yes.
our purpose for being here.
Yes.
And,
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah, no, I really want to thank you and appreciate you coming out this evening. We get a package on Friday to go through these things ahead of time, and I'll say yours was by far the most interesting. No, I really enjoyed reading it, and it gave me a much better understanding, because I didn't have it before
Yes,
that. I'll be
yeah.
straightforward.
You're not
so.
alone either.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people just aren't very clear. Oh, they see that sign that, what's a biosphere? But, no, it's really, it's a wonderful thing that we've been given this designation. And mind you, you had to do a little work for it. They just don't plunk it on anybody. But, I mean, I think it's just a wonderful way to celebrate this whole area around the lake. And you look at the Cabot Trail and you see that all the time, do the Cabot Trail and the best place on the island of Cape Breton, blah, blah, blah. But you go around that lake, drive around it, and it's, to me, I mean, it's as good as the Cabot Trail. It really is. And I mean, we really need to work as 4 municipal units and really push some sustainable tourism for this area. Really, we need to do that. That's my private little beef, so.
So we're hearing that you're requesting a letter of support for your recertification at the 10-year
Yes.
mark. Okay.
Yes.
So, Councillor Sampson.
I would like to make a motion that we do provide that letter of support to UNESCO.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. I have Councillor Sampson wanting to make another.
I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Sampson. So we have a motion on the table to write a letter of support for the recertification for the British Lakes Biosphere Reserve Association. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so all those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carried. So we will follow up with you very shortly on that. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Really
This was really
appreciate
great.
thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good luck with the rest of your agenda.
Yes.
Thanks, Yvonne. Go see you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, so our next presentation is from the Strait Area Mutual Aid Association. We welcome Jim Kavanagh and team. Jim is the president of the Strait Area Mutual Aid, new president, I understand. So I want to start off by thanking you so much for your patience. We've had a couple of, we've one heavy item in particular on our agenda, and it's a little later than we would have anticipated. So thank you for sticking it out. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Okay, so one of your mics is active there, and then the other, to activate it, you just press the button and I'll activate it for you, okay? So welcome.
Well, thank you
Okay.
very much. First of all, I guess I'd like to thank Municipal Council for inviting us down to have a little chat and introduce who we are and what we do, and try to get to know each other, you know, and start a real good mutual relationship that'll help everybody in the mutual being the right word, I guess, eh? I guess a quick introduction. My name is Jim Kavanagh. I'm the president of the Strait Area Mutual Aid. I'm currently the fire chief in the big bustling town of Port Hastings. I've been a firefighter for 33 years. I started when I was about 6. To my immediate right is Paul Shears. He's the vice president of Mutual Aid. He's firefighter in West Bay Road, 12 or so years, I guess. To my immediate left, Bobby McCachran, our treasurer, firefighter in West Bay Road, 43, 44 years? 45. 45. And last but not least, we always save the best for last, Carol Ann McGuinness, retired deputy chief from West Bay Road Fire. She's our recording secretary, been 29 years in the fire service. I guess to start off of who we are and what we do, in and around 1976, some fire departments got together for a need. They seen a need to have some improvements in the fire service in and around I say the Strait area, but you know, our whole area altogether. The mission was to provide continuous improvements to the fire and emergency services in the Strait area. Currently, we have 28 fire departments in our association, which covers parts of Richmond County, Inverness County, Guysborough and Antigonish County, towns of Port Hawkesbury, Mulgrave, and Antigonish. A highly dedicated team of volunteers operating emergency services while providing critical help as needed. An asset to local residents, businesses, industry, schools, municipalities, provincial governments, and guests to the region. Some of our affiliations that we deal with quite often, the Fire Service Association of Nova Scotia. Both Bobby and I sit on the board of directors of the Fire Service Association of Nova Scotia. Maritime Fire Chiefs Association, Nova Scotia Firefighter School. Bobby sits on the board of that as well. Emergency Health Service, the Office of the Fire Marshal, and Training Fire Association organized, by our chairperson. We have a training chairperson that takes care and organizes training for our members and departments. Some of the stuff that's been achieved over the last couple of years, one of the needs that came up that we talked about for improvements in the area was a way to page and notify emergency personnel about emergencies. So purchased, begged, borrowed, got a hold of, paging system upgraded over the years. Everything that was done was bought and done by the Mutual Aid Association to be able to alert people that what the emergencies are, where it's going to be. We were one of the first ones in Cape Breton to have an air bottle filling station for our self-contained breathing apparatus, which is located in the Port Hawkesbury Fire Station. This enables departments to get air bottles filled for emergencies 24/7. You know, if it's 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, we can get it done. Mutual aid agreement enables neighboring departments to respond to other coverage areas when requested. Again, later on in the presentation, I'll mention the word, because the word volunteer seems to be forgotten in the fire service. Most people talk about ex-fire department, no matter what the area is, but the word volunteer is forgotten a lot of times. So with the help of the Mutual Aid Association, we can always make sure we have enough people showing up when needed to be. Dispatch capabilities with local dispatch through 911, through our local dispatcher, Cancer Dispatch, out of Port Hawkesbury. They initiated a provincially recognized ground search and rescue unit, which primarily consisted of firefighters. They respond to searches both inside and outside our coverage areas, no matter where they're requested. Originally, as I said, it was primarily firefighters. It's grown to become an entity of its own, purchasing its own training center and command posts, and it responds to lost parties no matter where they're needed. A small list of equipment that we have in our association. Again, this is only the tip of the iceberg. 12 sets of extrication tools, commonly known as the jaws of life. 4 are located in Richmond County, 1 in the town of Port Hawkesbury, 2 in Inverness County, 1 in the town of Antigonish, 1 in Guysborough County, 3 in Antigonish County. Now, these units regularly respond to motor vehicle collisions outside the regular fire districts, because not everyone carries these jaws of life. So again, being part of the mutual aid, they go to other people's area when requested. 2 ladder trucks, 1 in the town of Antigonish, 1 in the town of Port Hawkesbury. Both of these have been responded well to emergencies inside and outside their respective coverage areas. Some additional equipment, several ATV snowmobile rescue sleds, ice and water rescue equipment, high and low angle rescue gear, confined space rescue gear, and gas testing equipment. Again, this is only a partial listing of the equipment that's in the Mutual Aid Association operated by volunteer personnel, which are essential to respond to Richmond County and other county emergencies as well. These are the tools that protect our families, our properties, our local businesses, and our workplaces. What Richmond County could do to assist emergency preparedness in cooperation with the Strait Area Mutual Aid Association. Ask number one, meet regularly with our association to discuss concerns. For instance, how we make improvements to our paging system for areas that don't have really good cell coverage. No service, no response. The people don't know what's going on. It's hard for them to respond to it. Ask two, provide us with information on how the municipality could fund, engineer, design, supply labor, and equipment to ensure that dry hydrants are in place for areas of Richmond County that do not have municipal water hydrant service. This is of the utmost urgency and importance to us. Immediate close availability of water is required for emergency firefighting. A third ask, consider how it's possible for Richmond County to assist in the purchase of needed equipment that could be shared amongst other departments, such as hose testing equipment, which would save individual departments money and ultimately preserve lives. Providing money for essential emergency preparedness equipment allows volunteers to have safe and reliable equipment when it's needed. Here is just a picture of some of the stuff we do. Our dispatch center, which is the picture down off to the right, is not quite as elaborate as that.
I was going to say, that's impressive.
But ours really does the trick. The local dispatch and the guy that's there, it's always nice that he knows the area as well or better than we do sometimes. So, again, just a few little notes there. Richmond County's continued support for our volunteer firefighters and emergency response teams, increased equipment maintenance capabilities, and additional coverage of response capabilities to our rural areas. I had mentioned before the dry hydrant thing. This is a typical picture of what a dry hydrant is. As I said, for areas that don't have municipal water service, it's an area that we can pull in with a fire truck, hook our trucks to, and suck water safely out of a water source. There's an engineered plan that has to be put into place to have these done. So that's part of our wish list to get more of these around the area, so people that don't have municipal water in their area still has availability of water, so fire departments can get to it in an emergency situation. We feel we need to continue to work together. Over the past several decades, fire departments have evolved and become more of an emergency service, responding to a lot more than just fires. Our volunteers, and once again, I stress the word volunteers, may not always be available to respond to emergencies due to family, work, or other commitments. This is a big reason why we feel that our association is critically important to ensure that adequate help is available during an emergency. In summary, our association strongly believes that because of mutual aid, emergency services in our area has become a huge asset for people living in, working in, and traveling through our coverage areas.
Well, thank you. No, I really appreciate the information and the diagram on the dry hydrant, is extremely helpful, because honestly, I was, as an inexperienced person, I was really struggling to figure out what that meant. So that was extremely helpful for me. But I'd like to ask councillors at this time if you have any questions for Jim and team. Okay, Deputy Warden.
Yeah, Jim, I just got one, and you might know it offhand, that's why I'm going to ask. The average cost of the dry hydrant, for those who don't know, is there, I know every place is different, but is there an average runabout cost that's?
You're probably looking, and this is a guesstimate of the best of it, we did have an engineered plan made up for the engineering, the plans, and the permits needed to get started is round about $2,000. That's before you put a shovel in the ground.
Right.
You still have to buy your equipment, you still have to get the gear in there, and you still have to have a piece of land that's adequate enough that we can get in and out with several fire trucks. Because remember, this is a stagnant water source. It doesn't have any pressure to it. We have to have a truck
Yep.
right directly hooked to this pipe so we can draft or suck water from it and then we can either push it to another truck and carry it to where we have to go, or pump it directly to a fire. So not only does it have to have enough room to park a truck, we have to have enough room for a second truck to come in to be able to fill off it as well.
I missed that number you stated, Jim, sorry. Could you repeat that?
So about $2,000 just for the
start.
planning. That's just before you even put a shovel in the ground. You're probably going to look at the best part of $6,000 or $7,000 per hydrant.
Okay, yeah.
By the time.
Including that.
That $2,000 though, once that covers it.
Once that's done.
That's done for all of them. Well, not all of them.
No, it's not
but-
going to, because you're still going to need approval from environment for each spot, TIR
correct.
for each spot. You know, everyone is going to have to be looked at individually, right?
individually,
Because
yeah.
there's a lot of government departments there that has to give their approval.
Okay. Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, we should probably look at high, low at 7 to 8, probably looking at closer to 10
Okay.
per.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Sampson. That is not working for me today.
We just never know which Samson it is. That's why I'm like, is it me? Is it me?
Which one is it?
Since I have the mic, I have 3 questions. You're funded how? Through membership fees paid by the fire
The
department?
Mutual Aid Association? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
All the equipment that you talked about in the presentation, I'm assuming are all owned by different volunteer fire departments, but made available to all as required?
With the exception of the paging equipment, which is owned and operated by the Mutual Aid Association.
Okay.
And the air bank, which is maintained now by the Mutual Aid Association as well.
The one that's hosted in Port Hawkesbury at the
Hawkesbury,
volunteer fire.
yes.
Okay. And then the last question I have is also about dry hydrants. So you identify the one in Cleveland, but I suspect there are other locations that are also requiring those.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
in your mind, what would you see as the most urgent needed dry hydrants in our county?
Any place that does not have access to municipal water.
So do we have I'm adding another question, sorry. Where do we have these currently? Maybe is a better question.
I believe Mr. Shears would be better
There you
answering
go,
that
Mr.
one.
Shears.
Richmond County currently has 3 dry hydrants. One's located in Cleveland, that's non-functioning. One's located at the Lordways Fire Hall, and one is located in District 10.
And District 10 is not part of our association. They're outside ours. Because when I say we only cover parts of each county, not the whole
Gotcha.
thing. Our farthest one in Richmond, I believe, is Grand River.
Okay. And that's including the new one that they just installed in Lordways, like, recently, right?
Yeah, I just
Okay,
stated that.
so, okay. So really, really, mutual aid only has one that functions, is the new one that's in Lordways.
So, yeah, because District 10 is having issues with theirs as well.
Yeah, and if they're outside of the mutual aid area anyway, right?
I
Yeah.
mean, we'd still use it if we had to.
If you had to, yeah, okay.
By all means, that's the whole meaning.
Yes,
behind
they
it.
would allow it,
Yeah.
they would allow you to use
No,
it even though
absolutely.
they're not technically part of.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brent Sampson.
And I know you may not, do you have a rough idea that, within this region, what the number would be that you think would be adequate?
Basically, for Richmond County, I can tell you right now that St. Peter's is currently looking at an installation of a dry hydrant in the River Bourgeois area. In speaking with the chief in Louisdale, I believe they're considering one on the Black River Road. Basically, for you to obtain that kind of information, it would be forthcoming from your individual fire departments, as they know their own areas. Just one comment to that, it's that we're in 2020, heading for 2021. The days of fire departments pulling up to a brook, having to chop ice, get a suction hose in. You know, we're more and more safety oriented today. It's very safe for our trucks and people to pull up and load through dry hydrants and onto other trucks.
That's a really, really great point. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from council? No? So I noticed you had a couple of sort of asks, I guess, for Richmond County, and I think what we could do as a council is take a look at that and work with the staff and our emergency management coordinator to talk about how we can, how we can move closer to the asks on your list. I really like the idea of having, regular meetings with your association. I mean, I think it's important to maintain that dialogue for darn sure. And of course, the other items related to, the access to water, the dry hydrants, and assisting with funding, that's something we absolutely can be looking at discussing within our budgeting conversations too for the new year, which are coming up faster than we can, faster than it feels. So so for sure, I thank you very much for coming in and presenting. I think we have a comment from Deputy Warden Digdon.
Yeah, no, actually, I just have one question, and maybe, is there anybody already set up, I guess, instead of each, I know Lord Wave's just finished installing their own, or is there somebody that, I'm not gonna say recommend, but is there somebody that you know of that can go, I guess, and set these up in the areas? So I guess, my question would be so that they're all set up to the exact same standards.
I don't think we'd have a recommendation of any contractor or anything to be able to do that. I would definitely agree with you that it'd be nice to have a set of plans that be it in Grand River, be it in Louisdale, be it in St. Peter's or wherever, that we have the same kind of design, basically, and safe area that what's there. I totally agree with that. For me to recommend someone to do that, I mean, really, I couldn't if I tried.
The other point that you have to realize is what the dry hydrant location water supply is. For example, we now have issues with our one in Glendale, especially late July, late August. We still have a flow, but our pipe is now too high. So there are dry hydrant locations you'll have to put in a holding tank, right? So that the holding tank will be able to fill. The pipe is under enough water that you don't have an issue with air, right? So it basically, it's going to vary on the design for every different location.
Well, from the information you've provided, though, it sounds like our individual fire departments would be kind of the experts we would go to in the in our region to find out what they feel is needed in terms of dry hydrants, and having to
And that's something that we could
volunteers
do
at
as
the
well,
table
being
is-
as our contacts with every fire department. I mean, it's something that we could send out, on behalf and stay in constant communication with one another and say, okay,
Yes.
Lord Way, St. Peter's, where's your wishes? Where would you think is a good idea? And let's start collaborating all these together so we can start making a plan.
Yeah.
That's something that definitely that we do without a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know?
because there are two just on the island alone, Jamron's Island being one of them, which is, like I say, almost half an hour away from the fire department to the end of Jamron's Island.
Yep.
You have to drive back to.
And the north side in through Rocky Bay and Cape
Rocky
Around
Bay,
and that
yeah,
area
that's
would be the
right.
same thing, right?
And
So,
then the point is honestly the same.
Yes.
So you're almost looking at,
Well, the point would be
you
that,
have to, I guess.
yeah, we gotta find out.
Counselors, I'll just ask you to press your little. But if you're done, then it's too late.
and I think it's a big thing that we're not asking. I mean, we'd love you to be able to write us out a $500,000 check and say we can get it all done overnight. We know that's not what's
Right.
going to happen. But I think if we start to have a plan and look at a short-term and a long-term plan, that okay, we're going to do X amount of them this year. Where's the most important ones that's got to be put in, and let's start on it, and then work our way to where we have to be.
Yeah,
You know?
certainly.
And again, we're going to be going. Word on the street is that other municipal units wants us to go and do a presentation as well. So the word is getting out there that we want
Excellent.
to push out who we are and what we do.
Right.
And again, we really want to strive that it is volunteer what we do, and it's 24/7. When the tones go off, you can't, if it's a blinding snowstorm, you can't just roll over and say, I'm not going. It's, you get up and you go. So, I've always been a bit biased towards the fire service for that. You hate to tap yourself on the back, and that's not what any of us are looking for. We're not looking for recognition. We do it because we love our communities and we love doing what we do. We're just looking for some help in doing it, and we thought it was a good way to start it.
I think if there's a table you do not need to convince to the value of volunteer firefighting, it would be this one. But I appreciate the
that's good to hear.
emphasis.
That's good to
Yep, we've got a couple of volunteer members at the table, and certainly some of us been the recipient of your fantastic response. So yeah, if we could count on you to kind of to take that information back to the association, back to the departments in Richmond, I think it would be very helpful for us to have a strategic approach to understanding what's needed where most urgently, and then look at planning accordingly. Budgetarily
Emails will be
around
sent
it.
out this evening,
Wonderful.
and then we can start that ball rolling.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
This is from, from
Yes.
municipal water sources.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's nice to put some names with the faces. I think I had met most of you, but Paul, it's really good to meet you in person. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. I
We
appreciate
Thank you
it.
for allowing us the opportunity.
Yes,
Thank you.
and thank you again for your patience in waiting. I
That's
appreciate
That's
it.
no problem.
Okay, so I think that concludes our presentations for this evening. So we have next on our agenda our Director of Public Works, Chris Boudreau, to discuss the Richmond Water Utility water rate study. Sorry, Don.
I'll speak on behalf of Chris.
Okay, thank you.
So essentially, it's just a briefing note regarding a water rate study that will be required in the future sometime in the next year or so. And of course, it's essentially information for you folks to review. And perhaps we could get Chris, if you guys have any questions, to get Chris back in likely in a couple of weeks, where you guys can have some questions regarding the information that he's provided. We're looking at providing some direction in the new budget to try and do a rate study to have it effective April 2022. Rate studies are conducted to account for deficits in the water utility, and with the new system in Louisville coming online, and more expenses associated with those, the functioning of that facility, it's going to potentially put a strain on our water utility, and that's what a water rate study is all about. So it's on the radar basically, and you folks can, like I say, review it and ask any potential questions that you might want to ask him, if there are any, and he may be able to provide some answers at the council meeting on the 21st of December, if you so choose.
Okay, so so do we need any kind of a motion to that effect then, Don,
Well, I think it is sorry.
to approve the study? Oh, apologies.
Oh, sorry. There we go. So I think his recommendation is to proceed with a water rate study, but I think we're a little ahead of ourselves right now. So maybe once you folks have a chance to review it and ask some questions, get some more clarification, then we can go ahead and make a recommendation then.
Okay, well, thank you very much then. So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Councillor Sean Sampson regarding bylaw number 56, tax exemption. Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, thanks, Warden Membercat. So, yeah, for me, looking at bylaw 56, the tax exemption bylaw, looks to me like in late 2018, early 2019, there was amendments made to this bylaw to the point where it says cap the current assessment account numbers included and not consider any new applicants except for applicants that were currently pending. Is that correct, Don?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So, looking at the list of the ones approved, in February, March, April, back to, I think the last one was June 24th of 2019 was the last one, and it was the Friends of St. John's Society. So this bylaw is simply just being amended or opened back for applicants that wanted to apply for tax exemption. Is that the way this works?
So what happened was when council considered capping it, there were several organizations that had requested to have access to the bylaw.
Right.
And so what they did is they left those as pending.
Right.
And proceeded to close the bylaw, and I believe it was done in April. Was when it was actually finalized.
Okay. So the first reading of this bylaw, to close this bylaw, was May 27th of 2019. The notice of publication was May 29th of 2019. And the final publication was July 3rd of 2019. So the last possible option was St. John's, the Friends of St. John's, which was version number 7, June 24th of 2019. So that was the last pending applicant for tax exemption.
not 100% sure. I'd have to check that to confirm it, but
Right.
it sounds accurate.
Okay. So is this bylaw closed, or can we do the same if there's ever applicants for a tax exemption? Can we reopen this bylaw and welcome applicants again? Or?
Certainly, council can consider reopening the bylaw. Obviously, there would have to be an amendment made, and it would have to go through the same process as was made to close it.
Right.
So it would take, perhaps 3 months
Right.
to reopen it. Yeah.
Right.
And that would be a decision of council, obviously.
Right.
There was a reason why council closed it in the past, and those things could be discussed. I mean, perhaps we could bring it to a bylaw committee meeting and discuss it at that level, and
Yeah.
perhaps begin the process then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not naive to the fact that, the operations of this municipality and the budgets that we face, is largely in part to tax revenue, tax, coming in. So, it's hard for us to, give everybody tax exemption when we're counting on tax revenue to keep this place running the way it is. But there's also groups out there that, are in need of tax exemption, right? So I would look at reopening this bylaw for sure, right?
Okay, so it sounds like we have, okay, sorry, Councillor Melanie Sampson.
I just wanted to say that I would be open to definitely taking it to the Bylaw and Policy Committee to just have those conversations, because I certainly would like to get more information in terms of why we decided to close the bylaw and all of those pieces. So I certainly would appreciate if we could do that.
Okay. Any other discussion? I don't think we need a motion to that effect. It's just it's just an instruction for our policy bylaw committee. So, any other comments? Sorry.
Yeah,
Councillor
sorry. So,
Sampson.
yeah, just looking at this list, Dawn, I mean, is everybody that's tax exempt in Richmond County on this list, or is there some people missing?
Not nonprofits.
I'm not sure I follow you. The accounts that are on the list were commercial taxable, or whatever version of a taxable assessment that they possessed. So they are and currently are taxed commercially or residentially, and they are on that list, and we create a journal entry each year to remove those taxes from their accounts.
Okay.
So they continue to get a tax bill. However, the taxes are removed through journal entry once a year.
Okay. So this list has nonprofit organizations that are tax exempt, and they're listed here.
No, they aren't tax exempt. If they're on the list, they are in receipt of a tax bill.
Right. Okay. But they're credited the balance, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they still remain as commercial taxable or residential taxable, whichever.
Right. So so I guess my question is, these applicants are identified. Is there anybody should be on this list that's not on this list, or is there any other groups that you know of that should be on this list?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know I don't understand what you're asking, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm aware of other tax exempt groups that are not identified on this list.
If they're tax exempt, then they don't need to be on the list.
Right. So that list, so as I understand it, that list is for organizations that would normally be taxed, and then an exception has been made for them.
Yes.
And they're credited back their tax bills.
Bylaw
But there
56.
are a whole other host of organizations who are just tax exempt and would not really receive a tax bill.
That wouldn't need bylaw 56 to be tax exempt.
Right. Okay.
Exactly.
So Councillor Sampson, yes?
Yeah, I think you just said it there anyway. I was just trying to understand. So
Right.
yeah, in this case, these are properties that receive a tax bill and it's credited back, whereas there would be other properties that are tax exempt that would never make that list because it wouldn't be necessary. Does that make
Precisely.
sense? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Warden?
Yeah, so I guess, maybe Don, you can give me some clarification on that, and I understand both sides. The question I would have was, what would make somebody, I guess, fall under bylaw 56 where they become tax exempt as opposed to somebody not even making the list? Sorry, well, become somebody that's taxable, but yet I guess, is credited back at the end of the year as opposed to somebody who's non-taxable at all?
Well, there are obviously criteria that you have to follow in order to qualify for Bylaw 56. And when an organization requests to have their name included on the bylaw, it comes before council, and they make that decision to put that account or that property on the list.
Okay, Councillor Melanie Sampson.
Where would the information be located, sorry, new girl, for those that are tax exempt? Like, where would I find that information for the criteria for those that wouldn't be taxable, like they wouldn't receive a tax bill? That first category, right? So the second category is those that would be taxable, that we've made exception through Bylaw 56. Where could I find the information that would tell me the criteria of those that would be literally tax exempt, meaning they wouldn't get a bill and we wouldn't need to put them in Bylaw 56?
Those properties are tax exempt by the province and not by us.
And where would I, is that meaning they're not on the tax roll or something?
Oh yeah, they're on the tax roll, but they would be just classified as either commercial exempt or farmland perhaps. There are a few types of assessments that they would qualify.
Okay, so
However,
I'd be looking at provincial regulations or something to find the criteria.
well, it'd be,
or the list.
Yeah, through PVSC, property
Okay,
evaluation would
perfect.
do make that determination.
You got it. That's what I'm looking for. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions regarding Bylaw 56? No? Okay, so hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Councillor Melanie Sampson regarding the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Councillor Sampson.
I just wanted to take a moment, as yesterday was December 6th, and in 1989, on December 6th, L'École Polytechnique in Montreal had a terrible tragedy where 14 women were senselessly murdered. And I guess I just wanted to recognize that here tonight officially, as yesterday was that National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, and just wanted to ensure that we remember those, and that as a county, of course, we want to honor their memory and any others who have experienced any gender-based violence. And so, you know, it's incumbent upon us to, you know, call out folks and speak up against acts of gender-based violence. So I just wanted to make that recognition here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Okay, any questions for Councillor Sampson on that item? Okay. So next on our agenda, I had a couple of items added. The first was sewage testing for COVID-19, and you know, I think as councillors in the past, we have really encouraged people to get in touch with us regarding any ideas they might have for the betterment of our communities. And I did receive a communication from Dr. Bob Martel on November 27th, and he provided some, I guess, background information on the potential benefits of sewage testing to detect traces of COVID-19 in communities. He did, you know, I'll read a little bit from the information he sent to me. And it says, with the realization that 5 of 800 tests done yesterday, which would have been the 26th of November, on asymptomatic people, they were positive, and when some of the contacts were tested were also found to be positive, there's no doubt that we have community spread. What's particularly concerning is the fact that 5 days before symptoms present, patients are most infectious. Therefore, waiting for symptoms to test is a very poor strategy and one that will cost lives. We know there is a great deal of travel between HRM and Richmond County residents. Not all of it's essential, and some of it would have exposed people to red zone areas. One way to monitor whether COVID-19 is in our community is to randomly test sewage for the virus. This would alert residents on a system whether there was COVID-19 in the community. Wolfville has just reported a positive sample. And in doing some research on this, I found that Fredericton-based company Lumen Ultra filed a patent for technology that says it can help provide quick and early detection of COVID-19 in a community. It's a research in partnership with Dow, but so far has proven portable and less costly than other forms of testing. And according to the mayor of Wolfville, she has declared it a good early warning system for her community. I did want to mention that wastewater surveillance data are recommended by the CDC to complement other surveillance indicators. It's not the silver bullet to determine the presence of COVID-19 in your community. But Dr. Martel has kindly agreed to provide any advice on this topic topic. And so I guess at this point, I'm interested in asking, in hearing from council of what you think on the matter, if there might be an interest in asking staff to look into it in terms of feasibility, efficacy, cost, et cetera. So, Councillor Brent Sampson.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. We should ask staff to look into it, and then once we have the costs back and a little bit more detail, we could consider it more seriously. But considering everything that's going on and how we can't really look too far into the future lately because we don't know what it holds, anything we can do to better arm the citizens of our county to be aware of what's going on, I think it'd be a positive.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Melanie Sampson.
I would echo Councillor Sampson's comments. The only concern that I would have is time. And so, it's unfortunate that we wouldn't have the costing kind of beforehand so we could make a determination tonight. And I'm just wondering, maybe the CAO could help clarify, if we would get the information in terms of cost in the next, between meetings, do we have the ability